Thank you, Johannes. It is really an honor to be here this evening. Action Books is kind of really famous in my house, mostly because my now 12-year-old daughter, when I got the email saying that they accepted my manuscript for Night Badly Written, saw me jumping and crying and laughing at the same time. And she said, "Oh, Mom, is Action Books the one that sent you that email?" And I said, "Yeah." So it's a real privilege to be here, so thank you, Johannes, for inviting me. Also to be with Daniel, amazing translator, amazing poet. It's all just, it's kind of a dream come true for me. So tonight I am going to read mostly from my translations of the Cuban poet Victor Rodriguez Núñez.
There's a light.
Oh, gotcha. Great, thank you. But I am going to, a little bit later on, read to you some of the work that I've been doing most recently of younger Cuban poets, 2 women poets from Cuba that I feel are particularly resonant right now. So I'm going to be reading from Night Badly Written, which is an anthology of Victor's work from 2000 to 2015. These poems are a chronicle of his experience of moving to the United States from Cuba. And Victor's situation is a little different than a lot of Cubans. Every immigrant has their trauma. I think the trauma of the Cuban immigrant is very political, having to choose sides, either choosing the official revolutionary culture or choosing to be in exile. And Victor is unique in the sense that he has chosen to be independent. It's best described, I think, by Lasse Söderberg, who's a Swedish poet, where he says, "Being an independent Cuban poet is hard. Supporter or dissident, there are those few who keep their distance without distancing themselves. Victor is one. He doesn't write the way either side expects him to." So these are poems that chronicle in different ways his experience in the United States, his experience of what it means to be Cuban in the United States, rejecting traditional notions of what nationalism is. I'm going to start off with a couple of poems from Tasks. Another thing that I should mention is that Tasks has been shortlisted for the National Translation Award along with Daniel's Valdivia. So again, that's it's very exciting time for me. So I'm going to start off with a poem that, because of the hurricanes that I've been having lately in the Caribbean, I think is particularly pertinent. This is from Tasks, number 4, Inclemencies. Rain has the soul of a sewer, the amber truck passes by spewing foam, water fallen on hard times stagnates in front of the barber shop, wandering cyclist wrapped only in a bolero. Though thunder names it, the apple doesn't heed the rain. Nothing waits for it to stop, and everything follows its dry course. It must be hot in this poem. Like when it's rained on Campanario Street and a rainbow springs up from the asphalt. Rusty petals, mirrors that never reflected a glance, and the sun begins to gather syllables, bits of cloud, radiant wounds, shaky illusion. The clock scatters its kernels. They sprout in the breeze, stirred up only by your hips. Palm tree above the wall, bed of linden. Everything will bloom if the rain carries out its threats. The yellow truck passes by again. Music's dust storm, an unpolished sun beats down on the carpenter's bench. The policeman glows, eyed from the tenement, preparing for the bembe. Yet the rain carries out its threat. When it rains, it pours. The adobe jungle throws off its mammals. A purple raincoat might be a sign of distinction. A cursive letter. Young and old fight over the stream of a working gutter. Miraculously, no doubt. On a piece of cardboard, someone surfs the waves of San Lázaro Street. It's the only moment when we know they'll resist the future's ruins. One more from Tasks. 18, Urbians. San Nicolas Street, a drum's nerve gives it this clarity, hiding profiles, skins worked by the hot season with its great damp care. At last the roosters crow, not the ones in my memory. The city bores into crevices with its rhythmic light. Someone's roasting coffee accustoms the air. Ants in milk, miraculously not curdled. Olive oil, its copper essences. Onion grown with wash water. Academic bell pepper quoting Vitier, and the tiny egg muddied with chicken shit. I walk down this street to be engraved. Mamoncillo peels, disputed by ants' tongues, golden turd where black beans glitter. San Nicolas Street, fiber of rumba grinds the whistles of those who play chipped marbles and rent aimless bikes. Reality begins to sour, and sun as surcharged. I don't get what this dust cloud is saying. Granite grounds by footsteps and rustic rainstorms, snow-white bread sweat with black, fruit ripened with carbide, markets bloom from the ruins. At least the flies are spooked by my steps. The pertinent sparrow startles light with its veracity. The rust fritter doesn't dissuade it, lets it work. The sweet saltpeter against southern wind, the tin piss pot with cornmeal lumps, spattered by twilight's waves, won't dent its hunger. The sparrow interrupts, the candle stub, penumbra let loose, San Nicolas Street. On the corner, a harmless, dead rooster, river rising between gray rooftops. No credo will make you take root. I'm going to read now from another book called, in Spanish, De Cielos, in English, Thaw. So Victor does a lot of kind of challenging ideas of what Cubanness is in content, but also in terms of form. The poems that belong to this collection called Thaw appropriate the decima. The decima is a very traditional Cuban poem of 10 verses long. Normally it's 8 syllables, which is 8 metric syllables. Each verse is 8 metric syllables. Very, very traditional. Tends to talk a lot about the Cuban nation, Cuban nature. And so what he does is he appropriates the form. He refuses to use 8 syllables. He does either 11 or 14. In this case, he does 11. I do not replicate that in my translation. He avoids rhyme completely, and he talks more about the Ohio countryside, which is where he's lived now for the past 17 years. So I'm going to read a few of these. This is number 1. There's a circle of hot earth where grass holds sway, frost wouldn't dare, snow lasts less than love. In the dead of winter, this green sore. Everyone goes right past, obsessed with their insignificance. I don't come or go. I stand there. I echo the void. 3. Light forsakes you among fiery sunflowers, flags soil the gentle wind, being clots from the pond geese rise, flying in squadron in their image. Everything follows the traces of sun, save the butterfly, all at once landing on a syllable. 100. Nothingness rekindled babbles inside the stove. Its light in the glass leaves a clearly illegible message. From the edge, its shadow spells out the answer in my ear. In the night, nothingness copies itself from a folio thrown to the fire, like a snowflake, fleeting and beautiful. In 2015, Victor won the most important prize you can win for an unpublished book in Spanish. It's given in Spain. It's called the Loewe Prize. And I'd like to read a few poems from that collection. It's called Despegue in Spanish, Departure in English. Again, we're dealing with this coming and going, impressions of both what it's like to go back to Cuba, though you've left, even though you haven't really left, and then coming back to the States. So I'm going to read one poem that's an impression from perspective of Cuba, and then returning to the U.S. The first is called Santa Maria. Santa Maria is a beach about 15 minutes east of Havana. No half-light to drop dead under, sprawled on this beach like the crab luckless and forgiven by the child. You feel for the stone that winks at you, its fresh militancy, and the bicycle chock full of seashells crosses you between claws. The sand in Sasuras puts the claves off beat. The world is a wiro painted any which way. At the discretion of the tourists, nobody told you before what you learn if you leave the water. "27 Mallard Point." This is the house that I live in with him. We've been married now for 20 years. Yesterday was our 20th wedding anniversary. So this is his impressions of home as when he comes back. 27 Mallard Point. Suddenly, at the home you no longer recognize, and worse still, doesn't recognize you, though you've left DNA fibers on all its edges, and you've lugged with you various skies, some sea bottoms. Now you know no return for you. At the shores of this imagined lake, your language will be forgotten. Things with useless letters uttered. Don't shake off that wrinkled shadow or the leftist gaze. Here you're a stranger too. So I'd like to take a pause from Victor's work and read to you a few things that I've been working on lately. One of the main goals I have as a translator is to kind of translate folks that kind of define notions of what a typical, what we think maybe a Latin American would write about, what a Cuban would write about. In this case, these are two young women poets who belong to a generation in Cuba called Generation Zero. They were born beginning in the 70s, started publishing after the year 2000. They grew up in a very difficult time for Cuba after the fall of the Soviet Union. This is typically called the Special Period, which stands for the Special Period in peacetime, basically meaning that you were at war even though you are not at war. So the most difficult economic times that probably Cuba has ever faced. These are poets that do not have access to what most of us do have access to in terms of connections. The internet is pretty much non-existent. They are a generation that, for me, is some of the best that's being, the work that they're writing is some of the best that's being written right now in Latin America, though they are not well known outside of Latin America precisely because they don't have the ability to make these connections like other poets do. The first poem I'm going to read is by Camila Medina Rios, who was born in 1981. She's done some amazing things in her short life. Has won like the Best Poetry Book Prize for her first book, Cuba. She's also a prose writer, has been an editor for the Cuban Writers Union. She's quite experimental in terms of form. The title of this poem is a combination of two words. In Spanish, it's furnia, which is a combination of the word furnia, which is a hole that's dug into the ground, and furia, which is fury. I tried to mimic this a little bit in my translation by combining the word foramen and fury. Foramen, for those of you who don't, I mean, I didn't know what it was either. It took some work. It's an opening or a whole passage, especially in a bone. So it's not, it's an approximation. So, foramen. The exercise of writing posted outside, writing split by the corner of your eye, an incision practiced in a writing insisting on foramen. Spider holes, nostrils, mouth, eye sockets, ears, vulva, vagina, pocket, bay, navel, anus. And even the discovery of interstices under tongue, between teeth and gum, under knee, over elbow, in collarbone, soap dish, in the 16 arches between each toe, in armpits, in the hollow of hands together and hands behind, in corners of the mouth, on foreheads, wrinkles, on chapped lips, in the stench of crow's feet, in groin's fissure, under the weight of braids and breasts, in surrendered nape, in ankles' softness, in womb's valleys and hillocks, in the purple between nails, in the illegible folds of palms, in the cracked foramens of knuckle. Woman pit, woman carpet thrown, woman parachute folded. Woman udder and boda and uterus, woman river opening, mater, mother of pearl over Madripoor, mother of the word, Ave Maria Demijohn. A body desiring another that fondles and bores through, bed of sand and shell to be de-hollowed. Seashore, seaport, boatyard, dry dock, watering hole, spillway, bird bath for bears and geese. Egg, ovary, basket. Wicker woman, flexible reed, hemp, sweet flute, spike, weakened lily, stamen woman, embroidered edge of woman. The exercise of riding like a whip on flesh to open ditches and free fluids. Woman urine, woman blood, woman starch, woman milk. Avalanche, flood, coil, murmur, froth, arcade, swing, swaying, woman, lullabier, rocker, healer, sheath. The exercise not like the erection of a panoptic, but like a shutter, widening of the dilation of being inhabited, explored, dug, drilled, sawed, sliced, riddled, trepanned, run through, unfastened, deflowered, defenestrated, open. Woman, porous, leporine, leverate, leprous. And the exercise is an amputation of what she doesn't have and is more than enough. Father sore as the gash is excavated, mother sore as equilibrium is practiced, with hands open wide on the umbilical cord and jumping rope, making bracelets, anklets, and nose rings, and playing hangman, nail and nailing, lace, with an exercise inwards and outwards of insertion and desertion, fury and foramen. A writing insisting its cove has a rage, a confessed oracular peninsula. The armadillo that hides in a cave takes fright, becomes egg, broods, can start to vomit, claws, tongues, tentacles, hooves, extremities, palps, octopuses. Neighborhoods, hand in darkness, scratches, threads, eager tongue, magnet, famines, writing, vessel constrictor, writing contained, writing containing to be writing embrace, siren, voice, corporalized perfume, handkerchief, in the wind, billboard, woman, jelly roll, woman, long R of the law, iron magnolia, Madeline dissolved in tea, powerful, attracting memories. Crocodile tears, stalactites, beach wells, winter eye, woman, scissor, slash, stake, ice pick, teeth of comb, blade and lion, woman, balaclava, armadillo in Chinese, like animal adorned to cross the mountain range, woman, wall, woman, cobra, whip, vipered, woman, potion. A writing that kills woman, lengthening her venom if she lets her tongue grow and self-quenches or penetrates, like an infernal Ouroboros, hermaphroditism in the touch, a sensibility that forms pools and is muzzled with its own temptation. Remove your tongue, woman, from the bait. Close your mouth. Blacks don't laugh out loud. Women don't open their mouths wide to eat or yawn. Cover it, dirty girl. A writing that looks at itself and whose clitoris grows with verbal excitation is frightening. Fury in foramen, silenced, not foramen in fury, call, flash, that woman anemone, turn to liquid skin spleen to put out the nymphomaniac, open woman lymph, to hurry bitter pill, taste with the tongue a writing, deathless, cryless, painless, not kneeling down upon the grains of wheat. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Let yourself go, to let oneself go, to let oneself be. Thank you. I'm going to read, so as you can tell, this is, when I read this, I was like, oh, this is not the way Cuban women are expected to write, both in content and in form. Legna Rodriguez Iglesias was born in 1984. She just recently won the 2016 Paz Prize for Poetry with Miami Century Fox. She is, in a different way, experimental. You'll see. Number 77. My God, you gave me a live pig's tongue that quivered in the electric cooker, and it stuck its tongue out at me, spurred me to bark at it and bite it and stick it up my vagina. A pig's tongue, plump and pink like my tongue, quivering just like my tongue. I know that quiver. I know how to make it just like that and cause the same provocation, the same happiness. My God, that gift fell straight out of heaven. drove me crazy, made me go off the deep end. It was when it softened, leaving mobility behind, leaving me behind. I let it there at that time and space of drowsiness. Its death lasted half an hour. My God, why is death beautiful, and why do we delight in it if all it actually wants is to keep on wagging its tail, living for always on the face of the earth, the face of any country, even the United States of America, a country we already know is a synonym for cooker. So I got out my knife, and I got out my fork, and I ate the tongue, and now I'm going to go to bed, to sleep hard, and I'll dream of you quivering in the cooker. 99. I'm not going to read you a poem by Ezra Pound, Mom informs me on the phone. I'm going to read you the last law to come out this year, which is also poetry, and you'll be happy to know people can get married with just social security numbers now and not have to wait to be a resident. Just be a person and want to get married, to read as many poems by Ezra Pound as you want to each other, whenever you want and in the position you choose, Mom informs me on the phone. People can get married with just social security numbers and not have to wait to be a resident, just a person, and want to get married, to read as many poems by Ezra Pound as you want to each other, whenever you want, and the position you choose. I keep repeating, a chatterbox subject to changes. It's not to read poems, much less by Ezra Pound, that I'll get married to you. It's so you'll enter me whenever you want and wherever you want and the way you like, and tear everything and make everything unholy, if you want to or not. So I'm going to end now, going back to Victor, with the long poem where we get the title, Night Badly Written. This is my favorite poem by him. It is over 2,000 lines long. It's called Midnight Minutes, and I'm not going to read 2,000 lines. I'm going to read an excerpt of poem number 11. I don't exist but for your absence. Somber secretion, I exist because I seek to articulate silences. I'm a glow of burning nothingness. The poem isn't a vessel adrift, horizon shipwrecked, its water frayed, visceral currents, all this swelling light, frothing ache on the other's phoneless beaches. Night disjoined repeats, craft of otherness, raised in a basement, scorched with cold, pyramid light, tallied sands, uneven column, bears twilight's absence. I can't read rocks. I can't write snow. I only seek the language I taught oblivion. I came to keep quiet. There's nothing else but to flow to one side of night, not spent in vain. Listen to nothingness, its splendid discourse on being. Not a syllable more to shell, penumbra catches its breath, orders delirium. There's not one nick on its firm pale face, not even a scar to seep the lucid dew, and there's no light to shadow the glare of so much darkness. I leave it all here. Not even my shadow on the page. I am a creation of night, sleepless matter affirming itself, something more than a beautiful wordiness, souled body, bodied soul, something more than the copula on the old staircase of the word with its shadow, these notes at the margin of light, pure, illegible text, minus your breathing, night badly written. Thank you.